Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a story that sparked a ton of controversy and, honestly, some pretty serious questions. We're talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, a convicted sex trafficker, sentenced to 20 years. So how did she get transferred to a minimum security federal prison? So let's just dive right in. The big question is, how does something like this even happen? I mean, a sex trafficker in a prison nicknamed Camp? Well, according to the source material we're looking at today, this wasn't just some simple paperwork mix-up. No, it's an alleged story of rules being bent and, political influence. So let's start unpacking those claims.
Okay, so to really get what all the fuss is about, you first have to understand the place at the absolute center of it all. We're talking about Federal Prison Camp Bryan down in Texas.
And here it is. The source material shows this, strikingly open layout. And when I say open, I mean, think about it. You're not seeing guard towers. You're not seeing big perimeter fences. It's a design that just screams low risk, low security. And get this, a local political figure, someone who knows the area, is quoted in the source. And he doesn't even call it a prison. He describes it as a beautiful campus, something like a sanitarium. I mean, that description right there, a place to relax, not a penitentiary, that's really at the heart of this whole thing.
The whole profile of this place is just wild. It used to be a prep school, and now it's this sought-after camp for female inmates. But, and this is key, it's for non-violent, low-risk offenders. And, as we're about to see, the fact that it's in a college town is a huge deal. Every single detail about this place points to an environment built on trust, not on lockdown security.
Right, so that college town location, it's absolutely crucial here because the source shows us that this prison isn't just, down the road from a campus. It's deeply, deeply integrated with its neighbor, the huge university, Texas A&M. And the source points to these really specific programs where the lines between the prison and the university just completely blur. We're talking about inmates working right alongside college students and professors. They're training service dogs together. They're working on teaching degrees. I mean, these kinds of programs can only possibly work because of one single foundational assumption, that every single inmate there is low risk. And this quote from the source just cuts right to the chase. Maybe one of the reasons sex traffickers aren't allowed here is because it's a college town. The whole model is built on trust, on this integration with a community full of young people. You put a high-risk offender in that mix, and you could put the whole thing in jeopardy. So with all that as the backdrop, we get to the central anomaly, the big question mark, Ghislaine Maxwell. Because the source we're breaking down here argues that her being at Camp Bryan isn't just a little weird. It's completely unprecedented. And I mean, you just can't make the contrast any sharper. On one side, you've got your typical Camp Bryan inmate, nonviolent crime, low risk, maybe some kind of white-collar thing like what Elizabeth Holmes was convicted of. And then on the other side, you have Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of sex trafficking, a crime that is officially designated as both violent and high risk. It's just two totally different worlds. And then there's this sentence itself, more than 20 years. That's a really critical piece of this puzzle. Because according to the federal prison system's own guidelines, a sentence that long, especially for a violent crime, should, by definition, disqualify you from a low-security camp like this. Period. So what's the core allegation here, according to the source? Well, a local county commissioner is on record claiming that an exception was made, that the rules were bent specifically for Maxwell, and they allege she is the only inmate there serving time for this kind of crime. Okay, so if the rules were bent, the obvious next question is how? And maybe more importantly, why? And this is where the source material we're looking at starts pointing fingers right up the ladder toward allegations of high-level political influence. And the claim from the source is incredibly direct. It alleges that the approval for this transfer didn't happen at some low level. It came from the very top, the Department of Justice during the Trump administration. Now, it's really important to show the other side of this. When he was asked about it, former President Trump flat out denied knowing anything about the transfer. He dismissed it, basically saying that moves like this are not a very uncommon thing. But one of the speakers in the source, that former Texas mayor we heard from earlier,
he frames this as part of something much bigger. He puts forward this theory that Texas has kind of become a proving ground, or maybe a dumping ground, for these politically sensitive favors for powerful people on the national stage. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second, because the source material doesn't just end with Maxwell. It really wraps up by looking at the broader implications, the bigger concerns that come out of this one single decision. The source really lays out this whole web of key players and, well, conflicting interests. You've got Maxwell, the high-risk inmate in the low-security prison. You've got Donald Trump, whose DOJ allegedly signed off on it, but who publicly denies it. Then you've got state officials in Texas who are accused of just looking the other way. And right in the middle of it all, the Texas A&M community, who, the source argues, are the ones being put at risk. So at the end of the day, the source argues this is about way more than just one inmate. It's about some really fundamental things: the safety of a local community, the integrity of the whole federal prison system's rules, and, maybe most importantly, the potential for political influence to creep into how justice is administered. Not to mention the risk of her fleeing or being harmed, and the precedent this whole thing sets. And that leaves us with the final, pretty provocative question that the source poses. Is justice actually being served here? Or are we seeing some new, darker version of anything goes becoming the new normal? Is this just one weird story in a Texas college town? Or is it a sign of something much bigger happening with our ideas about justice, power, and who is held accountable? It's a tough question, and there's definitely no easy answer.